Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 218, and every day we just creep a little bit closer to the actual departure from Rivendell. Though, like I said, I actually count last week as the first of our post-Rivendell period, because when they're getting together and starting to shiver in the cold, getting ready to go off, it's true there are final words yet to be spoken, but this, in my mind, is really the beginning of the post-Rivendell section of things. But anyway, we will jump back into the text, because tonight we get Boromir's latest interruption. But before, just a couple quick announcements. First, I wanted to just draw your attention in the space program. We've been talking about our space program. 2 new things that I wanted to make sure to draw your attention to, because they're pretty exciting. That is, we are starting 2 new languages. Both of them are being offered for the first time coming up in April. But if you are interested in learning Ancient Greek, or if you are interested in learning Old Norse, we are offering both of those now in our space program. And Old Norse is actually both of them we're going to offer at both of the different levels. So, of course, within our space program, we offer the opportunity for people who don't know a language at all to be able to learn it, and it's a wonderful place to learn a language, because unlike just picking up something like Duolingo or something like that, you get a chance to actually be in a classroom with other students and with a teacher, and learning these things together in a supportive community. So you can learn Old Norse from scratch, you can learn Ancient Greek from scratch, but also if you've studied either one of these languages before, and maybe it's been a while, right? Maybe you went to seminary at one point and studied Greek, but it's been a while, right? And you might kind of want to brush up your Greek, or maybe you have taken some Old Norse classes before and want to keep your hand in, right? Make sure you don't lose it. I know, I don't want to name names, but I know some of our Signum alumni who might be in such a position. And so we have advanced reading courses as well. So within these next couple months, we're going to be beginning advanced reading modules. We're going to have a series of modules reading the Volsunga Saga in Old Norse, and we're going to have a series of modules. The first one is going to be reading through the Gospel of John in Ancient Greek. So we'll be able to accommodate folks who already know the language and want to either maintain it or brush it up, and also people who want to learn the language from scratch. So both of those things in both of those languages, Old Norse and Ancient Greek, will be starting up in space pretty soon. So it should be a pretty fun opportunity. The other thing that I wanted to emphasize is our regional moots. We are approaching regional moots again. So if you go to the Signum homepage and you scroll down to our upcoming events, here we are. We have Tex Moot and Sunshine Moot and Myth Moot. All 3 of these are open for registration right now. So if you go to, so Tex Moot is on March 26th, Sunshine Moot on April 2nd. So those are coming up soon. And for either one of them, you can either sign up in person, to attend physically in person, or you can attend remotely and digitally. Both of those are open for registration, Tex Moot and Sunshine Moot. Tex Moot is in Austin, and here at Winter Park, Florida is technically the town in which we're going to be in Florida. So the theme of Sunshine Moot is the practice of magic. We're going to be talking about magic in Sunshine Moot, and at Tex Moot, it is starships, stewards, and storytellers. How imaginary worlds teach us to care for this one. So it's going to be thinking about things like environmental stewardship and what we learn about our world from fantasy and science fiction literature. So both will be a lot of fun. I'm going to be at both, hoping to get a chance to see a lot of people. So looking forward to connecting with folks again, and of course Mythmoot. Mythmoot is going to be happening at the end of June. This is our big annual conference. That's our full 4-day conference. Sunshine Moot and Text Moot are both short, inexpensive conferences, just the one day on the Saturday there, March 26th and April 2nd. And I am excited to be able to see folks and connect with folks again. It's been a while. It's been since the beginning of November since we've had a regional moot, so I'm excited to get back into those again. I would also say, I mentioned it in the past before, we're still working to get together, especially we would love to do an Ohio moot. We'd love to do Buckeye moot. I want Buckeye moot to happen this year. If you would be interested in helping us to organize that, it's not a big burden. It's not a huge responsibility. What we just mostly need is boots on the ground in Ohio to find a location and sort out some of those details. So if you'd be interested, I know we have a bunch of Ohio people actually. So if you would be interested in helping to pull that together, again, we have a whole thing. We have a dedicated team who is working on the regional moots. It wouldn't be, you would just be, again, you'd be boots on the ground, helping to work through some stuff, but we'd be coordinating all the heavy lifting. So and you wouldn't be, if organizers are not responsible for the digital side. We take care of the digital side and all the tech and stuff like that. So Moot hosting, Moot organization is pretty simple, really. But we just want to encourage folks to get involved, because that's what enables us to be able to go to different places and do these other moots. So, yeah, we do have a moot in a box, Matt. It's exactly what we do. So anyway, just let us know. Send an email to info@signumuniversity.org and just let us know info@signumu.org, and let us know if you would be interested in that. Date range, well, Marhas, that's one of the things to be determined, right? So if you would like to guarantee that Buckeye Moot is at a time that's going to be convenient for you, well, no better way than to be involved and help us find a location at the time, at the weekend of your convenience. But we're basically, essentially thinking about April or May. Basically, is what we, on late April, early May, is around the time that we're kind of thinking, probably May at this point. So that's the range. But if we can still get that together, but we'll have to seal something up soonish. So that's why I'm just calling to see if anybody would be interested in that. All right. So that is the announcements for today. Let's get into the text here. Let's see. Hang on a second. There we go. Got my windows all messed up here. Got to make sure I can see folks. There we are. All right. So, Boromir's Horn. This is another wonderful example of a passage that, until I put it on a slide, I felt like I'd never read it. Now, it's not quite true. There are some passages which really make me feel like that, give me that, like, I have no memory of this place kind of feeling, where I feel like I've skipped over that paragraph every single time I read this book my entire life. That's not the case with this. I remember the incident of Boromir blowing his horn. But so it's not quite in that category, but it is in the category of ones that make me think, I just really never thought through the implications of this before. I'd always kind of taken it for granted. So so we did the first bit, but let's read through the whole slide, and then we'll kind of pick up where we left off. The company took little gear of war, for their hope was in secrecy, not in battle. Aragorn had Andúril, but no other weapon, and he went forth clad only in rusty green and brown, as a ranger of the wilderness. Boromir had a long sword, in fashion like Andúril, but of less lineage, and he bore also a shield and his war horn. Loud and clear it sounds in the valleys of the hills, he said, and then let all the foes of Gondor flee. Putting it to his lips, he blew a blast, and the echoes leapt from rock to rock, and all that heard that voice in Rivendell sprang to their feet. Slow should you be to wind that horn again, Boromir, said Elrond, until you stand once more on the borders of your land, and dire need is on you. Maybe, said Boromir, but always I have let my horn cry at setting forth. And though hereafter we may walk in the shadows, I will not go forth as a thief in the night. Okay. So Boromir interrupts, and Elrond strikes back with prophecy, right? Retaliates with prophecy there. At least something that sounds at first like advice, but seems to slide into prophecy before his sentence was over. And then, of course, we get Boromir gets the last word there. Now, we talked last time about Aragorn, especially, and we spent a lot of time talking about as a ranger of the wilderness, right? He's in his scruffy clothes again. And I think I agree. People were saying that rusty green, when they think about rusty green, this is almost certainly not like a nice Robin Hood Lincoln green that he's wearing, but almost certainly some kind of like dull, drab, like dark olive green, essentially. Brownish green, right? Okay. He had Andúril, but no other weapon. He always, as far as we could see, had in. Now, I wonder, does this mean that he never had any other weapon but Andúril, in which case he was in fact weaponless, apart from a broken sword? I remember, I think it was Tony who was so annoyed about that in the Inn at Bree, when we were discussing the Inn at Bree, and how, like, Aragorn goes around with, like, no primary weapon because he's carrying the sword that was broken in the scabbard at his hip. And we don't know, of course, that he had no other weapon at all before, but we're told that he now has no other weapon. And to me, the significance of that, first of all, are we even... I don't even think this passage necessarily compels us to draw a conclusion like Aragorn is strictly against belt knives, right, or dagger. Like, he has no dagger or anything. Maybe he does have a dagger. That's not what matters. What matters is he had Andúril but no other weapon. Like, he is going forth. Like, it is at the very least, like, symbolically important that Andúril is the thing he's resting on. He doesn't have, like, a big secondary weapon. He's not carrying a bow. He's not carrying, like, also an axe or something like that. Yeah, JJ, I also would think that a dagger or a knife in the belt is a tool, not a weapon, very likely. The point is that, like, his reliance upon Andúril, and remember what that means. Aragorn had Andúril but no other weapon. Remember what it means to have Andúril, to have the sword of Elendil. What it means for the sword of Elendil to go forth to war. We will see that have a really interesting effect on people, right, in the future, when he gets to places where there are people. But in the short term, from the council, we recall the significance of that, right? Following in the footsteps of Elendil does not mean a march to glory and the ascension of the throne. Following in the footsteps of Elendil means going forth self-sacrificially to die, as Elendil died fighting the foe face to face. And remember, Elendil went not to seek his place, right? Not to seek it, but he went to leave it behind, right? His throne, Elendil's throne, was in the north, right? Was in Anúminas. And he left his kingdom and his people behind in order to go to war with Mordor. So Aragorn, on the one hand, is headed to Minas Tirith, right? And this is a big moment. We know that this is an enormous moment for Aragorn, right? Stepping out, having, been revealed in the council, having declared himself, I shall come to Minas Tirith, right? It's a big deal, and that's what he's doing. That's, we talked about that. That's where he's headed. He's not on the quest for the ring. That's not what he's here for, right? He is on his way to Minas Tirith with Boromir. But again, I think not to claim the throne. That's not the goal, right? The goal is he is out to oppose Sauron. He is off to fight the enemy. Why is he going to Minas Tirith? Because he believes he was summoned to Minas Tirith by the dream, right? Seek for the sword that was broken. He's got his marching orders, right? And his marching orders are coming from a supernatural place, right? He's not on the quest of the ring. But anyway, I think, therefore, just the emphasis he had Andúril but no other weapon really reminds us, right? Reminds us of all of these things in one short sentence. This is the sword of the king. Not going, but not the king, going to seize his throne. But also, like, Aragorn's all about this, right? This is his focus, taking up the king. But of course, the restoration of the king, it's not Narsil anymore. It's Andúril now, Flame of the West. So that idea of like the rebirth and reconstruction is there, right? We are reminded of that as well. He is we are remembering back to Elendil, and we are thinking forward to, him claiming the kingship. But that's not his primary mission. But remember, the quest for the ring is not his mission at all. Now, he'll be along for most of the road, right, as Minas Tirith is next door to Mordor, so they'll be going in the same direction for a long period of time. But that is primarily, and in a sense, a coincidence. It's not a pure coincidence, right? Like, wow, what are the odds that, like, Minas Tirith, where I'm headed, happens to be right next door to where you're headed? Like, that's not a coincidence, because where he's headed is, like, the ancient enemy of Mordor, set up purposefully on his doorstep to defy him. So it's not a coincidence. But again, they're not going together. He's not on there. He's not on the quest. And yeah, Dolor Stroke says he has no backup weapon. There's no backup plan. Yeah. Dolor Stroke, if Andúril were to fail him, he would die, as Elendil did when Narsil failed him, right? Yeah. That's what he's in this for. That's what Aragorn is in this for here. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Boromir has a long sword in fashion like Andúril, but of less lineage, and he bore also a shield and his war horn. So, what does this tell us? Boromir, the first thing we get is the similarity, right? The first emphasis with Boromir. First of all, it's interesting that we go with Boromir next, right? The company took little gear of war. This is a new subject, right? We're sort of starting at the top. That we're starting with Aragorn doesn't seem surprising, right? It doesn't seem to need explanation. That we transition right from Aragorn to Boromir is a little bit less certain, right? Why exactly do we do that? Well, it seems to be because of we're going to describe the armaments of Gandalf also, but we're not going to get to that until the bottom of the next slide. He doesn't seem to be describing them in something like rank order. You'd think Gandalf would come first, right? Then that he would be first and foremost, but he's not. Maybe we're saving him until the end and doing Aragorn first. That would make sense too. But in any case, putting Boromir second is interesting, and it does seem to be suggested by the similarities, the connections to Aragorn. Here's Aragorn, and here's Boromir, who is like him in some ways, but not exactly the same. He had a long sword in fashion like Andúril, but of less lineage. What do you think in fashion like Andúril means? I'm not really sure about that. I could imagine it in two different senses. On the one hand, it could be referring to style, like the kind of sword it was, of similar length, right? The sort of the hilts are sort of done similarly, similar sort of shape of blade and things like that. There are lots of ways to make swords, right? It could be a one-edged sword. It could be a two-edged sword. It could be, thinner blade, thicker blade. There are all kinds of, that is narrower blade, wider blade. There could be all kinds of options here. But in fashion like Andúril could also mean more stylistic, right? Like they look like they were made similarly, right? Would be another way to talk about that. Do you see what I mean? Like of similar craftsmanship. It might be a reference to, like, he had a longsword in fashion like Andúril. Like it's like shaped like Andúril. Like they're, very similar kinds of swords. But is the, the like artistically speaking, if you know what I mean, the sword from the same culture. Like, could you tell from looking at them? But of less lineage. Okay, I mean, yeah, presumably, right, as Narsil has a very long lineage, right? I mean, we know that Narsil is at least 3,000 years old, but we know it's longer than that, right? And Drosnik, as you point out, presumably it has some lineage, but Silk Waistcoat, that's exactly the question that I had. Can you see? Like, this appear to be a visual description, right? I mean, yeah. Do we need to be told that Boromir's sword is not as old as Aragorn? I mean, the shards of Narsil, right? The sword of Elendil is a super big deal. Of course, Boromir doesn't have a sword that's as big a deal as the sword of Elendil, right? I mean, nobody would possibly have assumed that, right? Or else, the response to, receiving the dream would have been like, we've already got one, right? I mean, so, what I'm saying is, I don't feel like we're being given information there, right? We without being told, we know Boromir's sword must be of less lineage to some degree. Even if it's like merely 1,000 years old, it's going to be of way less lineage than Aragorn's. But this seems to be part of its visual description. Boromir had a long sword in fashion like Andúril, but of less lineage, and he bore also a shield in his war horn. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly what that phrase, but of less lineage, is designed to convey to us. Can you tell? Could you tell by looking? I mean, if you weren't at the council, right? So, like, you're just like a random folk, like you put somebody, okay, I was about to say, like, you ask Butterbur, but maybe Butterbur is a bad example. You take Hama, right? Let's get Hama from Rohan, and you take Andúril, and you take Boromir's sword, and Hama knows swords, right? I mean, this is like his job. So Hama the Door Ward looks at these two swords, and Hama's going to say, oh yeah, this one's like that one, but it's of less lineage. You going to be able to tell? You going to be able to tell the lineage in that sense? Like, be able to see? Be able to see do you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to figure out if this is meant to be, if I'm supposed to picture, is it planar in some way? Is that what is conveyed here? Remember, we were given, it's still too soon to talk about Hava? How long do we have to wait? I mean, first of all, from another perspective, he's not even dead yet, right? If we can't talk about him now, when can we talk about him? But I mean, on this reading, and think about it this way. He has a long life. He still has a long and rich life to live before we get there. So there we go. Bjarnasonar, I agree that I also could imagine the craftsmanship being noticeably lesser, if not bad, right? Again, I don't expect Boromir's sword looks like a crappy sword, right? I don't think that's the point at all. Elf runes, yeah, no elf runes. That I think would be very likely. Yeah. Remember, we got that description. Hang on a second. Let me go. I gotta go. I saved them. Do I still have it here? Yeah, there it is. Okay, found it. Okay, on its blade was traced a device of 7 stars, set between the crescent moon and the rayed sun, and about them was written many runes. Very bright was that sword, the light of the sun showed redly in it, its edge was hard and keen. Okay, this is all about the blade. We shouldn't see any of that, right? Yeah, this doesn't say anything about the hilts or any kind of decorations there, but, okay. Going back up here now. Yeah, so we don't know for sure that it has runes, for instance, Evil Dr. Cannon, as you were suggesting, on Andúril. Not that I would be surprised. Aragorn is not carrying it unsheathed just to show off JJ yet. He'll get there, right? That will happen eventually, but not yet. Not yet. Yeah, for Thoughtless, I was thinking that same thing too. Narsil was forged by dwarves. Now, probably not for their own use. It seems very likely to have been a gift that is intended as a gift. However, I'm just saying that on account of that it came down to Elendil eventually, right? Had it been a dwarf sword, like made for a dwarf to wield, it is less likely by far it would have ended up in the hands of Númenóreans in the first place, right? So that doesn't necessarily, so it might be, but yeah. I don't know what it looked like, but I do agree the significance of that. I was thinking about that too. When I was thinking about that phrase, in fashion like Andúril. It's hard to imagine that it would be stylistically, again, not in shape, right? I don't mean in like like D&D weapon class. I mean in artistic style, that artistically it would be similar to Andúril, because Andúril's made by dwarves, and Boromir's sword, whatsoever be its lineage, must have been made in Gondor, right? I mean, unless there's some kind of very peculiar story which we never hear or have hinted to us about Boromir's sword. It is presumably a Gondorian sword made by Gondorian smiths, even if perhaps awesome Gondorian smiths of 1,000 years ago, and a sword that has been handed down in the family of the stewards, than which what could be more likely? But nevertheless, it would still be a Gondorian sword, whereas Andúril is definitely not a Gondorian sword. It was made by dwarves, probably for elves, then handed down to Númenóreans, then lying broken for a long time, and remade by elves again just now, right? Now, JJ, it is possible. It is possible, and I was kind of thinking of that they were actually intending to maybe Gondorians, the aforementioned Gondorian smiths, have been deliberately imitating Narsil. They probably remember. I bet you they have like drawings, right? They may remember what Narsil looked like, and therefore it has been an inspiration. And all the coolest swords in Gondor have been made to look vaguely like Andúril. Like Narsil, for thousands of years. It's conceivable that happened, but I still think that's. I think it's unlikely. I think it's unlikely, mostly because would they really have had sketches of it? I mean, it's been out of circulation for 3,000 years. 3,000 years, that's a very long time, right? The only way that they could do that is if there were a very detailed and realistic statue of Elendil modeled from his actual sword at the time, before his death, presumably, because the shards of Narsil were taken away and brought to Rivendell very early, right? Very early on. So yeah, I mean, it's conceivable. We know there are statues, but we don't know that they are statues made in Elendil's lifetime, right? There are statues in Minas Tirith made in honor of Elendil, but I don't know that they necessarily are like accurately depicting his actual sword. Maybe it's possible. But yeah. Almarea, that will be an interesting thing to watch. Almarea is asking, do people know the sword when they see it? Does Aragorn announce it each time? Well, he does announce it on a couple of occasions, right? Let's watch that. Let's keep an eye. I mean, seeing how people respond to Aragorn's sword is going to be interesting. Yeah. And Anna, what an excellent question that I was thinking about as well. When a sword is reforged, how much does it look like the original? Well, I don't know. The blade is presumably entirely new, right? The blade is, not new, reforged with the same metal and such, but you don't just. I don't know anything about bladesmithing. So let me just start off by saying that. But I'm pretty sure you don't do it like they did in the movie, right? Remember in the movie, they heat it up and then they put the pieces next to each other and Band-Aid them together? I'm pretty sure it doesn't work that way. You'd need a lot of Gorilla Glue. Pretty sure that would not work, right? I mean, visually, it worked really well in the film, right? To sort of show, we are showing the shards of the sword being reassembled so that, you totally know without us having to explain it with exposition that this is the sword reforged, right? That was effective in the film. But I think from a bladesmithing perspective, I don't think you do that, right? I think yeah, exactly, Tom. I have always been under the understanding that you have to melt it, all of the shards down and make it again, which would of course make sense of all of that attention drawn to the blade, right? Remember that description, that the initial description of all the runes and images and things on the blade, and the effect of the blade, right? The fire and ice and all that stuff. Remember with the blade, because it's the blade that's new, right? It's the same metal, new blade, same hilt. So yeah, so if they're totally redoing the hilt, the blade from scratch, they could presumably change the style of it. I don't think they would. I think they'd make it fit. I mean, you wouldn't want like a broadsword hilt with like a katana blade or something like that, right? Like they'd probably keep the blade the same kind of style as was original, but certainly when it's sheathed, as it certainly is in this description, as is also presumably Boromir's sword, you're just going to see the old hilt, right? Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, okay. All right. Yeah. How important was the skill of the smiths of Rivendell in the reforging blood? Very, I think. Very. But remember, Rivendell is the center now in Middle Earth of the last of the Noldor. There are a couple like Galadriel, right? She's an outlier in so many ways. But there are Noldor, like Gildor, right? There are Noldor, high elves who are in Rivendell. So I'm thinking there's some pretty qualified smiths there. Yeah, agreed. The Noldor got this, I think, is exactly right, Jackie. Yeah. Yep. I agree that they know what they're doing. I don't think they would have needed help from dwarves. I think the Noldor took care of that. But anyway, though you'd wonder if Gimli and Gollum would want to supervise. I doubt they have too much invested in it, though. I mean, even if it's known to them, as I wouldn't be surprised if it were, that the sword was originally made by dwarves. I doubt they have too much of a proprietary investment in the sword. But anyway, I think there are a few things we can take from that entire phrase. In fashion like Andúril, but of less lineage. On the whole, I guess, I think it's probably newer in style, right? Like, again, if we did my theoretical thought experiment and had Hama look at them, he would probably be able to tell. Boromir's looks like a modern Gondorian, sort of like, I mean, again, defining modern in the sense in which Gondor would, but it looks like other Gondorian blades he would have seen, whereas although it was a similar style, Andúril would look different, right? He would be able to tell, like, that's not the same, right? That does not look just like any Gondorian sword I've seen before, right? And yet it is in fashion like Andúril, and I suspect that fashion does probably mean primarily the shape, like they're both broadswords of a similar size, of a similar kind. And that, it seems to me, JJ, coming back to your suggestion from before, although I would be surprised if an exact, like, design replica of Narsil were still in circulation, in Gondor. I'd be a little surprised if that were the case, if they knew exactly, if, like, they could recognize it by the hilts, right? Or something, like, somebody were just to come across it lying in the street and be like, dude, it's the hilt of Narsil, right? Whoa. Like, I doubt it. I doubt it. But that it was known the kind of sword Elendil, like, so, like, for instance, like, I'm not saying that I think that Andúril was a katana. It wasn't. But, like, let's imagine it were for a second, right? Had Elendil's sword been shaped like a katana, then probably Gondorians to this day would be wearing katanas, right? I mean, that's what I mean, right? Like that I can easily see that Elendil's sword sort of was a trendsetter, and that trend has remained. Like, that's never gone out of fashion in Gondor. And so probably probably in fashion like Andúril does mean that in shape and style, and maybe even things in like how the cross guards are done and things like that. It might be similar, and that could well be a tradition that dates back to memories of the Sword of Elendil, which was certainly, even at the time, even before it became associated with quasi-mythical antiquity in Gondor. Even at the time when Elendil was alive, it was a famous sword. It was a famous and ancient sword at the time of Elendil. Yeah. Well, right, okay, I do hear you there, Fourth Dauntless, but see, okay, but I have a counter-argument. So Fourth Dauntless is saying, Gondorian craft has a direct line from Númenorian, and Narsil was not the most famous of Númenorian swords. That's true. Narsil was the second best sword in Númenor. The first best sword was Aranruth, the Sword of the King, which had been the sword of Thingol of Doriath before that. So the sword that Ar-Pharazôn was carrying on his hip when he was swallowed up by the ground of Valinor, and which presumably is still on the hip of Ar-Pharazôn, being held in wherever it is exactly that he is being held. Agreed. That was, in a sense, the number one sword of Númenor, and Narsil was at best the number two sword of Númenor. But here's my counter. My counter argument to that is, yeah, but Narsil was Elendil's sword, right? Was the sword of the faithful. Would the faithful and the descendants of the faithful in Gondor have been replicating the sword of Ar-Pharazôn or the sword of Elendil, especially since Elendil does become a figure of mythical importance because of his death in battle with Sauron very early on in the Gondorian story. He's not just the leader of the exiles who brought the Númenorians safely out of Númenor and back to Middle-earth, but then who gives his life in the overthrow of Sauron, their great enemy. I'm thinking Narsil, is the trendsetter, at least from that point. I wouldn't be surprised if there were some memories of Aranruth extant, in Gondorian weapon styles, but I would expect that if you asked a, first century, third age Gondorian swordsmith, right? So you're going to do the Narsil or you're going to do the Aranruth? I think that he would say to you, please, what do you think, right? That would be my argument. Dan, I like that. Dan says, I like to think that in the Dagor Dagorath, Thingol and Ar-Pharazôn fight on opposite sides, and Thingol kills him and takes his sword back. I would totally include that incident if I were depicting the Dagor Dagorath. Not that I expect ever to be doing so. Yeah. Now, the Black Númenorians probably do remember Rayburns, and see, there I could see that passed down in the Black Númenorian tradition. I would not be at all surprised to find some heraldry swords, which might still, of great lineage, which might still recall the sword of the great king. Yeah. JJ, no, Film won't get there in 50 years or so. We have no plans to do the Dagor Dagorath. The Film plan from the beginning has been to end with Sam getting on the boat. Sam getting on the boat is the end of Film. That's the plan. That's the plan. Yeah. Okay. So I guess that's I don't think we can be more certain than that. But I think it must be stylistically similar. Anyway, okay. But he also has a shield and a war horn. What do we make of that? So again, notice what we're getting here. In this first paragraph, we can see what we're not getting in these paragraphs is physical descriptions of these characters, right? We don't know. So much we don't know about what these people look like. It sounds like we might be getting something like that when we're told about the style and color of Aragorn's clothing, right? That seems promising. But then he immediately drops off, right? He's not just describing people. He's telling us the things that are important to know about them, the things that tell us something about that character and about their role in the company and about their kind of like worldview and attitude towards life and things like that, right? We're being told about their identity. Mad Violinist, I think, is a good way to say it. It's not just a piece of physical description, right? So Aragorn's rusty green and brown is important because it is telling us how he is going forth as a ranger of the wilderness. He could, but is not going. We know he has fancy gear, right? He could go forth as an elven prince. Why not, right? Cat's out of the bag, Aragorn. No more secrets. Time to, own it, right? Time to bling up, Aragorn. He could absolutely do that, right? That is an option. He does not do that. That tells us something about him, right? That tells us, I think, something important, that when he sets out, he chooses not just to dress down, but to dress way down, right? He chooses to dress rascally when he goes out. So again, I think that tells us something about him, something important. And then, of course, Andúril tells us something important about him. Boromir, these three things tell us something about him, right? His sword, his shield, and his war horn. Yes, Aragorn is going forth with significant humility. Bjarnasonar is exactly one of the things I think that we see. Yes. Boromir has defensive gear. Aragorn has none. I think that's interesting. Almarea. Yeah. Does this mean that Aragorn does not have the shield proficiency? Again, no, I think that's thinking differently, right? Remember, this is how Boromir traveled here, right? When Boromir sets out when he leaves Minas Tirith, and he's like, I've got a journey of, 110 days, give or take, to Imladris in the north, and I don't really know where I'm going. I need to be appropriately prepared, and appropriately prepared to him meant sword, shield, and war horn. Do we know that this is a shield Boromir brought with him from Gondor? Blad the Inspirer asks. It doesn't say explicitly. He bore also a shield in his war horn. I assume that, and I feel safe assuming that. Shields are... Yeah. Oh, Vardendil. Good call. A fustian he weared a gipon, all besmothered with his habergeon. Quoting from the knight's description in the general prologue of the Canterbury Tales. Well played, yeah. Aragorn is besmothered. The knight looks rather disreputable on his journey to Canterbury in the Canterbury Tales. And so does I don't know. I wouldn't go so far as rascally with Chaucer's knight, but he's not exactly dressing up for his thing. Now, Evil Dr. Cannon is saying, it does say a shield, and then it says his war horn. But yeah, Korkik, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yes, you don't carry, and just as Fourth Dauntless said, you don't carry a shield with someone else's device on it if you're the heir of a great house. Remember, it's going to be a big deal. Remember what a big deal it is when Gimli gets a shield in Rohan, right? He makes a big deal about bearing Éomer's device, right? He feels that honor has been done to him by Éomer, and that, he is sort of showing respect for them as well. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. I cannot imagine that Boromir set out from Minas Tirith without a shield, but then when he's leaving Rivendell, he's like, hey, anybody have like a shield or something I could have? Like, no, I don't think so. He would, a shield that he wore, and by the way, I cannot imagine that he wore a shield that looked like the shield he had in the movie. That always kind of bothered me a little bit. Like, no sign on it, no heraldry on that shield at all. Like, Boromir is the heir of the steward. Like, he's the heir of the lord of the city. He's not going to have a plain old generic shield. Did he lose his shield at Tharbad? Not as far as we know. Yeah, I mean, he lost his horse, but yeah, Hathalas, you're exactly right. Aragorn's a kingly line that's been sitting in the periphery of time and place. Boromir's a noble line that's been proudly on display. Yeah, exactly. Mr. Bigga suggests that Boromir's shield would have a picture of Boromir on it. Not as bad as that, I think. Yeah. Why would, I don't think he would ever have had any motivation to be incognito. Was he keeping a low profile before? I think not. And in fact, I think the passage that we are working towards getting to shows that Boromir doesn't do incognito. He's about to explain that he doesn't do incognito, right? He's going to do incognito partially and under protest, right? So yeah, I think that he has his shield with the symbol of his house on it. I think he's got the Gondorian tree on his shield. Like, you're going to know from looking at him that he is a Lord of Gondor. Exactly. Boromir's visibility is a huge part of his identity. I think that that's one of the things that's being emphasized. I think is why he bore also a shield. And again, why we're pairing Aragorn and Boromir here in this first paragraph, right? The two of them, very different perspectives. Boromir is dressing up, Aragorn is dressing down. In a sense, right? Especially as far as claimants for the throne. I mean, in fact, look at them. They look like the picture of what they are, like the contrast between them, of what they are. He looks like a rascally ranger, right, in rusty green and brown. But if you look carefully, you'll notice that his sword, whoa, like that sword looks like 7,000 years old or something, right? I mean, it looks like you would, if you knew anything about swords, you'd look 2 or 3 times at his sword before you looked away, right? But the rest of him, nothing much to see, apart from the fact that he's really tall. Yeah, Evil Dr. Cannon, you might think that his sword looks stolen based on his looks, right? Like, what is that scruffy dude got a sword like that for? And then there's Boromir, right? He also has a sword, similar, you look carefully, clearly not as good, but it's similar, and he's got a shield, which almost certainly has a heraldic device on it, and he's got his war horn, which is certainly a big deal to him. One of the symbols of his house, right? One of the symbols and traditions of his house. And again, if you think about it, the shield would have the his shield would be for Gondor, right? The horn is for his. That's for his house, right? That tells you who he is. So if you know anything, I mean, if you're at all familiar with the customs of Gondor, that is to say, if you're not some hick, I mean, and anybody knows about the customs of Gondor, obviously, just ask Boromir. You'd not only know what he is by looking at him, you'd know who he is, right? He's wearing the horn Only the heir of the steward has that horn, right? I mean, come on. Like a Gondorian child of 5 could pick him out, and be like, look, it's Lord Boromir. He's got the horn. So, hang on. Look, oh, goodness, we're not ready for the next slide yet. Yeah. So, that, I think, Evil Dr. Canon, is why we have the A shield and his warhorn. The warhorn is personal. It's personal. And proclaims his identity. And he's awfully proud of it. Look at the transition. Oh, wait, hang on. So one other thing. Another shield thing that I can't get away from. He's armed like a warrior. That seems like a simple thing to say, but again, Aragorn is not. You would not usually go into battle, and this is actually something I thought they did well, and picking up on the book, right? When they're going to go to war, that is, when they're marching to Helm's Deep. So between Rivendell and Edoras, Aragorn is dressed like this: rusty green and brown, as a ranger of the wilderness, right? But when they get to Edoras and they're going to go to war with the king, they're riding out to battle, they suit up, right? Aragorn does not wear rusty green and brown as a ranger of the wilderness into battle, right? He suits up. And we get the sort of arming sequence, right? Which was where that passage about Gimli and the shield comes from that I was talking about. Boromir, he's not wearing armor because that's really impractical for a journey. But, shields are a little impractical on a journey too. Quite, actually, impractical on a journey. Aragorn, there are other reasons, but shields are clunky. It's true, maybe less so on horseback. Yes, it's possible. You don't have to carry it on your arm the whole time. But I don't know. I mean, like, we have this idea of, dudes on horseback always having shields, but that's because we've been trained by medieval stories of knights jousting with lances, right? And if you're going to be doing that, then you need so like Mallory's knights always have shields when they go about, because you never know when you're going to encounter another knight and joust with them. So you need your shield for that. But that's not the world that we're in. Nobody does that in Middle-earth. But yeah, Andrew, I agree. It seems to be, the shield seems to be much more about proclamation of identity, but also about he is more prepared for battle. He is going forth as a war. He's prepared, right? He can't go in armor. That's impractical. But impractical for almost everybody except dwarves, apparently. But he is ready, if need be, to, cut his way through enemies in order to get to Rivendell. It's clear that combat is one of the things that he's fully prepared for, right? You just don't. Aragorn doesn't need a shield. He knows he doesn't need a shield. He's not going to have a shield. Anyway, the shield is a compromise between a long journey and pitched battle. Yes, but leaning towards the pitched battle side would be my argument. Kendall says, for all we know, he had 3 other shields on his lost horse. Yeah, he might have lost his second best shield. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder, Matt, if the shield has a similar descriptor here as his hair when he is first introduced. Boromir would not consider himself properly dressed without his shield for the journey. Perhaps. Perhaps. Yes. Andrew, that's really interesting. Andrew says, is Boromir's attire a further sign that it should have been Faramir the ranger who took this journey? Well, it's hard to feel like he wouldn't have been sort of better and more appropriately prepared for it in some ways, right? In physical and spiritual ways, perhaps. But yeah. And Almanrea, I really like that. Let's not just bash on Boromir here. Boromir is... We talked about these descriptions, these things being elements of their identity, right? The shield. That's also how he sees himself, right? Remember Gondor, bulwark of the West? His job as the general of the armies of Minas Tirith is to be a shield for all of the, they are the shield. They protect everyone, all the lands behind them from Mordor. That's also part of his identity. And as Almanrea was reminding us, he's going, in the end, to die being a shield as well for Merry and Pippin. What he does there, what he does with Merry and Pippin is not like unusual or uncharacteristic. It's totally characteristic. Like, that's who he is. And so, yeah, he bears a shield. Of course he does. Of course he does. Yeah. Okay. More on that later, though. More on that later. But back to the war horn. He just starts talking about it. Loud and clear it sounds in the valleys of the hills, he said, and then let all the foes of Gondor flee. Putting it to his lips, he blew a blast, and the echoes leapt from rock to rock, and all that heard that voice in Rivendell sprang to their feet. Now, I assume we missed something here, right? That is, when we're getting dialogue and it's not like we're getting everything that happens in the day, right? It's not like we're hearing everything and every incident. This isn't the Wheel of Time or something, right? So, loud and clear it sounds in the valleys of the hills. There probably was some kind of, somebody asked him a question, like, it probably doesn't do that apropos of nothing, right? They're all standing there minding their own business, and then Boromir is like, loud and clear it sounds in the valleys of the hills, right? Like, and everyone's like, wait, what? What are you talking about? Like, there probably was something that brought it up, is what I'm saying, right? Yeah, Blood the Inspirer, I agree. Somebody must have said, hey, man, nice horn. Like, that's pretty cool. Yeah, some kind of context there. He responds by talking about the sound of the horn. Now, this is interesting. And I think, to his credit, we were talking about the war horn and how essential that is to his identity, right? This is him. It is unique. The horn is unique, and it is a sign of his office, right? Of his position in society. He is the heir. He will be Lord of Minas Tirith someday. You can tell on account of he's carrying the horn, right? But that's not what he talks about, right? Like, this could be way worse. Boromir could be interrupting with, have I mentioned that this horn is, did I tell you the story of this horn, right? And what it means that I'm carrying this horn, right? He's not just being an insufferable braggart or something like that, right? He is Boasting about the horn, like he's praising the horn itself, but he's not praising himself through the horn, if you see what I mean. I think there's a really important difference there, right? He admires the horn. Loud and clear it sounds in the valleys of the hills. Have you heard my horn? This horn is amazing, right? This horn is a big deal. I love this horn. Loud and clear it sounds in the valleys of the hills. And then let all the foes of Gondor flee. He is, again, here not even at the end there. The first part of his statement is boasting about the horn, right? This horn is awesome, is what he says first. Loud and clear it sounds in the valleys of the hills. But the second half, and then let all the foes of Gondor flee, is a statement about, like, the future. And it's not even a prediction, right? He's not saying, and when I blow it, all the foes of Gondor run away, man, right? Like, it's not what he's saying. He's not bragging there. And then let all the foes of Gondor flee. And then they'd better run when I sound the horn, right? So, yeah, Captain Mo was just observing that. Yeah, or else, says Dr. Benway. Right. And then let all the foes of Gondor flee, or else. Why? Well, what normally happens when he blows the horn? What's the point? You know what I mean? Of the horn. Yeah, charge, exactly. Like, he's the general, right? It's not that the horn has magic powers exactly. It kind of does, actually, as we learn later, but that's not what he's talking about here, right? Why should the foes of Gondor flee? Why would it be in the best interest of the foes of Gondor to flee when loud and clear it sounds in the valleys of the hills? Because when he blows it, the armies of Gondor are coming after you, right? It's not about the horn, it's about the armies of Gondor and their allies, right? When Boromir blows the horn, that means he's saying everybody attack. And he's the general, and his blowing of that horn means let us set forth together and ride to victory, right? I mean, that's how it works, right? Then let all the foes of Gondor flee. This, I think, by the way, just to glance back at the description again, this is the other thing that the war horn tells us about his identity, right? He is a captain to the bone. He is a captain, right? He is a great captain, general. But even though he's he doesn't have his army with him, right? But Boromir, as he's going to admit, he doesn't do stealth. He also apparently doesn't do solo adventures either, right? Oh, that's nice. Lupita says, I would like to imagine that was what they told him when he was handed the horn. Loud and clear it sounds in the valleys of the hills, and then let all the foes of Gondor flee. Lupita, I love the idea that those are the words that Denethor uttered when he hands the horn, on the day that he hands the horn to Boromir. I don't know when, like, did he have like a Gondorian bar mitzvah at the age of 13 or something, and he's given the horn at that point or something? I don't know, but yeah, like there must have been a ceremony. Obviously, there was a ceremony, right? I feel like it goes without saying there was a ceremony where he was like, they didn't just give it to him in the Credo or something. There was a ceremony when he was officially given the sword. And I think, maybe he got it when he slew his first orc. Right, like I said, when he was 13. But anyway, yeah, I for Thanatos, that's exactly it. I totally think that it sounds like Denethor, doesn't it? And that he's quoting that now, like when he's telling other people about it, he's using those same words. Yeah. Sorry, I'm laughing as Kurtzimus says, Denethor probably gave Faramir a kazoo. I don't know what Faramir got, but I don't think it was quite as nice. I don't think it was quite as bad as that, but I don't think it was quite as nice either. Yes, and Blood the Inspirer, I agree. Evil Usher Cannon opines that the kazoo would also make the enemies flee, perhaps. Anyway, yeah, Blood the Inspirer was saying that Boromir, he says he respects Boromir for this. I think he sees how depressed everyone is and he wants to inspire them. There's a reason he's emphasizing. He's not just like, I don't think this is just like, oh, please nobody mention Boromir's horn. I don't think this is just Boromir being a boor, right? Being like embarrassing about his horn. He has a reason why he's doing this. He's sounding the charge, right? He is, let us go forth boldly and in confident spirit. Let all the foes of Gondor flee. This has always worked before, right? He usually gets I'm sure, a tolerably enthusiastic reaction when he blows the horn of Gondor upon setting out, right? Raises everybody's spirits. So that, seems like a good idea. And I can easily believe that that is a thing in Boromir's mind here. And I also can respect him for that. And it makes me think, Blood, of it makes me think that there's several things that it makes me think. It makes me think back first to the description. Oh, and I've got to hang on, I gotta go. I moved it all the way to the bottom of the list. Last week, right? The description, right? It was a cold gray day near the end of December. The east wind was streaming through the bare branches. East wind is never good. Was streaming through the bare branches of the trees and seething in the dark pines on the hills. Ragged clouds were hurrying overhead, dark and low. Remember how we were talking about the sounds and the sights and the darkness and the cheerless shadows, right? It's dark, it's cold, the pines are seething on the heights, the east wind is blowing through them. It's like there's this oppression. You can see the sort of enmity, right? And Lapita, I think you're very right, that the Boromir winding his horn is like in defiance of the east wind that is oppressing their spirits here. And I agree that as Fourth Dauntless was saying, raising everybody's spirits to do spiritual war with the enemy is a pretty good idea. Yes, agreed. And Vardendil is recalling the horns of Buckland and the Nazgul, right? I mean, I don't think it's exactly true to say that, like, the horns drove them away, but kinda. I mean, there was a correlation. The horns blew and they left. Now, they were like, we were totally leaving anyway, right? But nevertheless, like, it's important. It's important. And we have a lot of correlation between, like, horns always are a big deal. The blowing of horns is almost always a good thing, right? I mean, the horn call of Buckland that we already saw, right? We will get, of course, the horns of the Rohirrim coming to Minas Tirith. We will get the horn of Helm Hammerhand, right, at Helm's Deep. We will get Merry's horn in the Scouring of the Shire. Every time we get horns like that, it's a big deal and a good deal, usually, right? So the question, why is Elrond such a stick in the mud? Well, that's a great question. I got a couple things here. First of all, I wonder, all that heard that voice in Rivendell sprang to their feet. Why? That's a really ambivalent statement, I think. A very ambivalent statement. On the one hand, we know that horns can and do have that effect on people, right? Remember Sam hearing Merry's horn call, right? When he's riding off towards the Cotton's farm at the end of the Return of the King. We know that, like, people get stirred when they hear horns, right? So he blows the bus and everybody in Rivendell jumps up, right? What, full of inspiration, and like without even knowing it, they leap up as if to go and follow the horn, right? It's a call to arms. Yeah, exactly. But as I say, I do think it's ambivalent. That last statement seems to me ambivalent. Because I can just as easily imagine everybody in Rivendell springing to their feet and saying, "What the heck? Like, what is that?" Like, it's everybody in Rivendell knows. This has been a big community project in Rivendell for several months now. All the spies and journeying and everything that's been going on, right? Everybody knows that this is a stealth mission, right? I mean, they've all been dedicating weeks to scouting out the enemy and securing the passages and making sure that they're not espied and nobody can tell when and where they're leaving. And there's a horn call, right, going on. Like, what? I mean, obviously, I mean, do they even know that it's the good? Now, like, the horn call of Gondor, it's going to be, I do believe that it's going to have a positive effect on people. I'm not totally trying to argue against that first reading, but I've got to think that there are a few elvish voices calling out in chagrin as they're hearing this horn, right? Yeah, Matt also reminds us that Rivendell is hidden and has been for millennia. Yeah, we don't do that here, right? Can we not draw attention to the secret, the hidden valley of Rivendell, please? Like, that's yes, it's wildly inappropriate. Wildly inappropriate. Not a bad thing in itself. And I don't think that Boromir's motivation is a bad thing. But it is totally, utterly out of place. Now again, I'm not totally disagreeing with the other points. Again, like, I'm not trying to undermine that totally. That's why I'm saying this seems to me very ambivalent. Notice we're not told anything about what they thought or felt when they sprang to their feet. Notice how neutral it is? We were given merely the fact that everybody sprang to their feet. Are they springing to their feet in encouragement and inspiration, in alarm, in annoyance, right? In outrage, in, any number. No, I don't think they have a heavy brass accompaniment to the tra-la-la-la. I think they kind of keep that to a dull roar when they do that. But anyway, yeah, I'm sure there are some varieties of different people in Rivendell having different kinds of reaction, possibly even within particular people. There are probably some people who are, like, feeling strangely inspired at the same time that they're startled and a little bit upset. So let's get to Elrond. Slow should you be to wind that horn again, Boromir, until you stand once more on the borders of your land and dire need is on you. Slow should you be to wind that horn again. Don't do that. Boromir, don't do it again. Don't forget. Secret mission, Boromir. Stealth. Everything. They've been emphasizing and emphasizing. Everything relies on not being detected. Now, it's true that they know, like, that Sauron knows, or soon will, that the ring was brought to Rivendell, and he knows around where Rivendell is, right? So that's not a secret. But, okay, the secret mission is setting forth today, right now, is not, like, that's exactly what they were trying to prevent. It's one of the reasons they waited this long. Yeah. Now, here's the other thing. And then let all the foes of Gondor flee. Again, when do you blow the horn? Who blows the horn? Right? Another element here. Boromir, you're not leading this charge. Like, you're not riding into battle. And even if you see this as in some sense, like, metaphorically or through some kind of metonymy riding into battle, right? You're still not the Captain General here, Boromir. You're a member of this company. But he's pretty far down the list. He's not even on the quest of the ring. He's going home, which happens to lie in the same direction as the journey of the quest for some time, right? But you were invited to come along because you're going in the same direction. Now that's, Anyway, the point is, it's not appropriate. There's lots of ways in which this is not appropriate. I don't think it's wrong. I don't think it's evil of Boromir. I'm not saying it's bad. Essential, really bad. But it's a bad look. Not only is it really a poor idea to blow a horn when setting out on a secret mission that you desperately hope they don't figure out or catch on to, the enemy, but it's also, it makes me wonder if this could go badly down the road. Does Elrond foresee the possibility of dissension in the company here? Oh, like basically is his internal response here something along the lines of Boromir is going to be a problem, right? Yeah, it is a failure to understand the nature of the quest, Andrew. Yeah, he's not charging off into battle. And yeah, as Matt says, in another bad parallel, Boromir is among the hunted, not the hunters. Yeah, and again, like, notice, Matt, how that works exactly the same way, right? On the one hand, like, good on Boromir for thinking that way, right? I shall not go for, like, I'm not gonna, like, be cowed and like, there's the east wind, right, and the dark clouds and the seething pines and everything, but you know what? I'm not intimidated. Yes, we're the hunted. Yes, we are the prey, and we have to try to be secret and stealthy and stuff and not let the hunters find us. But you know what? I'm the hunter here, right? There's something refreshing. I like that, right? What's not to like about that? And especially, as Fort Dauntless was emphasizing, I think very appropriately, that kind of attitude, that's a better attitude to have at the start of this journey than a fearful one, right? A fearful and possibly despairing one. But yeah, it doesn't mean that he's, like, bad. Doesn't mean that he's evil, but he's not doing it right. There's a lot that at the best, I would say, there's a lot he's not thinking through. There's a lot that he doesn't understand. And one of the things that he doesn't he's gonna say, we'll come back to Elrond in a second. Maybe his response, right, to Elrond's advice, I wouldn't be in a hurry to do that again, Boromir, right? It's a really gentle rebuke, right? Elrond could have been way, way, way harsher than that, right? Slow should you be to wind that horn again. Little advice, right? And Boromir says, maybe. Okay, that's your response to Elrond, right? Thank you for your advice, Master Elrond. I shall heed it. No. Yeah, maybe. Maybe you have a point. Maybe you don't, right? Whatever. I'll be the judge of that. Maybe is, I don't know. But always I have let my horn cry at setting forth. Yeah, I'm sure you have, Boromir. What is his previous setting forth experience exactly? Normally he's setting forth at the head of an army, right? Or maybe like on a patrol, or, you know, like there are lots of reasons. I mean, he could even just be going out on a journey to, you know, like, hey, we're going to visit Dol Amroth or something. Who knows? But he's never set forth like this before, unless it were not even before. The only thing that's parallel is when he set off to leave, right, on his solo mission. But again, there was no secrecy involved. There's no need for secrecy there. But even if there had been a maybe they did want to be secret. But still, like, he's still the Captain General, right? And he would know that the people of Gondor watching him leave, even if it was only his dad, but it was probably more than his dad, right? The people of Gondor watching him leave would be uneasy, right? Oh, look, our Captain General is leaving. So what's he going to do? Blow the horn. Obviously, you're going to blow the horn, right? Let all the foes of Gondor flee. Blowing his horn upon leaving Gondor would say, think what that would communicate, right? Don't worry about me. Yes, I'm going off on myself, but this is like, I'm like a one-man cavalry charge over here, right? Like, I'm going off, but I'm going off like an army, right? Let all the foes of Gondor flee before me. There's nothing to fear. So that's a great message for him to send to his people, right? Another thing that it would say to the people of Gondor when he left would have been something along the lines of, like, I'm going before you, but I'm still leading. I'm not leaving you, right? I'm not leaving you behind. I'm not abandoning you. I'm just leading the charge in a different direction, right? So yeah, this is how we're rolling, but don't worry, let all the foes of Gondor flee. This is all gonna pan out, right? I'm just doing a you know, very circuitous, advance, right? So you can see how it's easy to understand why every time he has set forth before, it would not only have been appropriate, it would have been excellent for him to let his horn cry at setting forth. But he seems to be completely, there seems to me, at the very least, a kind of tone deafness on Boromir's part here. Do you see what I mean? But always I have let my horn cry at setting forth, and though thereafter we may walk in the shadows, I will not go forth as a thief in the night. I will not. Right? Doesn't this sound a little grudging? You know, do you see what I mean by that? Do you get the impression Boromir is not down with the stealth mission? Is there even reason to think, on setting off here, that Boromir could purpose to undermine the quest? Boromir doesn't want to send the ring to Mordor. He said that. That's open. He doesn't think the ring should be sent to Mordor. He thinks the ring should be sent to Minas Tirith. Brought to Minas Tirith. Right? I don't think Boromir believes in the stealth mission. There's a sense in which I don't think he wants Boromir, I don't think he wants the it's not that he wants the mission to fail exactly, but do you see what I mean? It's hard, Tim. I hear you that I'm not trying to just beat up on Boromir. What I'm trying to emphasize is that I think that Boromir, I think his motives are good. Even his motives for wanting to bring the ring to Minas Tirith are good. But I think that he knows. I think he knows what's best. I think that Boromir still believes that the council's plan, sending the ring with Frodo into Mordor, I think that Boromir still believes that's a bad plan. He doesn't believe in the stealth mission. He is anti-stealth mission. He's going along with the stealth mission grudgingly because he was outvoted, essentially, right? And again, I'm not bashing on him by saying that. He was quite open about that. It fits very well with what he's going to say again later on. I don't see any reason to believe that at this moment Boromir is like a complete convert to the stealth mission. That if you sat Boromir down at this moment, you know, gave him a few beers and got him talking, that he would say, yeah, you know, in my heart, what I think is best is that we send the ring to Mordor with Frodo. I don't think he would say that. I don't think he believes that, even now. I see no reason to think that he believes that, even now. And I also think yes, he wants to encourage them. Yes, that's a good thing in itself. Yes, he does have a tradition of letting his horn cry at setting forth. But I also think he's not an idiot. And I think he knows full well that blowing his horn on setting out kind of undermines the whole stealth mission thing. And I think there's a little bit of protest there. I think there's an element of protest. Like, I will not go forth as a thief in the night. I refuse. I'm going along with walking in the shadows. Kind of grudgingly, but I'm going along with it. But I will not set forth as a thief in the night. No? Well, then why are we letting you come along on this mission, for crying out loud? Like, that was the job. You know, everybody agreed except apparently you. Do you see what I mean? There's, and again, I don't think that he is being bad here. Again, I think he has good motivations for what he's doing, but I think he has reservations, and I think he's voicing his reservations. He's doing a little more than voicing them here. That's why the more I was thinking about this passage before our discussion here, the more, my subtitle here is Dissension in the Company, because I think the more this begins to seem, I never really saw this moment as a moment of foreshadowing in the way that I've been seeing it as we've been looking at it here. I do think that he is now. Someone, maybe Fourth Dauntless, I don't remember, was asking about would Elrond let him go if Elrond sensed that he was like being this sort of like openly passive aggressive, right, in his following the, or it's. But I think there are a couple things there. First, what are they going to do? He's not in the company, but he's going their way. What are they going to be like? Boromir, we're going to hold you back for a day or two, give them a head start, and then we'll let you go. Like, I don't know that Elrond rather has the. I'm not sure he can do that. I'm not sure he can do that. As Kurtzimus says, I think Elrond sees the die as cast. Yeah, exactly. I think he does. I think that we know, for instance, Galadriel, we know for a fact that Galadriel is going to see the danger, and she's going to let him go too. Right? Neither Elrond nor Galadriel is going to stop Boromir from going along with the company, even though I can't imagine that either one of them is, well, we know for a fact Galadriel is not unaware of Boromir's danger, and I would be very surprised indeed if Elrond were completely... I was going to say, I'd be surprised if Elrond is deaf to this. So he might be deaf in one ear for a minute or two right now. But I'd be very surprised if, when the story of the fall of Boromir comes to his attention, I'd be surprised if Elrond were shocked. I can't imagine he'd be shocked. Not even the wisest can see all ends. Exactly. I mean, of course, as it turns out, neither one of them is going to be wrong. That is, sending Boromir on the journey is not a bad idea at all. Like, it's going to turn out fine, in fact. So I don't think that shows that the fact that Elrond doesn't, call time out and, sit Boromir on the bench after this incident does not prove to me that, I mean, I could easily imagine the company sends out, Elrond goes back to his study and he's being there like, I don't know, man, that Boromir guy's going to be trouble. I have a bad feeling about this, right? I think it's very likely that he's thinking that. Anyway. Okay. Boromir giving Elrond some Isildur vibes. Yeah, he's seen this kind of thing before, right? This is not his first human captain at this point. And, Mr. Big, I hadn't really thought about that. Remember that Elendil and Isildur set off from Rivendell to go to the Battle of the Last Alliance. And Elrond was there, right? Is he also remembering the horns of Elendil and Isildur as they set out? I bet they did. I bet he remembers it, right? That's really interesting. And again, talk about ambivalent, right? It's not like being reminding Elrond of Isildur. It's not just a bad thing. Isildur was awesome. In lots of ways, Isildur was awesome. But it's also ambivalent. There's some bad in there too, right? Anyway, we didn't quite finish this slide, so we got through about 0.6 slides today, because we started this one last time and we didn't finish it today. We need to come back to Elrond's prophecy. I skipped over that because I wanted to focus on Boromir's side of things. We'll come back to that. So we'll start with this slide again next time to finish up Elrond's prophecy and the significance of that in this context. Maybe through that we can learn a little bit more about what Elrond is thinking and how he's responding in this moment. But I better let you go. It's late. I've gotten into bad habits. Poetry has undermined my the discipline I'd been attempting to build with ending class on time. So I will we'll stop our discussion here and we'll come back, look at the prophecy, and then move on to the interrupted description of everybody's arms and armor. So thanks everybody for joining me tonight. Field trip time. So for those of you who can't join us, thank you and have a good week, and I'll see you guys next week. And to everybody else, we're going to head out to probably a brief field trip, but that's okay. All right, there we go. All right, there we go. Excellent. Hey, Dr. Benway, glad you could join us. Thank you for joining us. And Andrew, I think I don't remember seeing you around either, so that's great to be joined by folks here. All right. Good evening. George Fire's with me this evening. Valori couldn't be with us tonight. So I think back to Mirabelle, back to our milestone up in the party hall up in the top.
Indeed so.
The function hall. Okay.
Party central with a nice filigree all over the wall.
Yes.
So I'm still not sure that we're talking about grapes here. When I look at these designs on the wall, they look more like just crystals, like bits of, I don't know, lapis lazuli. Not grapes to me.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, it's not like they're actual grapes. No. I
well,
mean,
of
like,
course, but I don't think of them as designed to be grapes either.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
I don't know. I mean, so, well, then what? Like, they're not just...
Like, kind of like, there. Not quite a mosaic.
They're
but
in
definitely...
but, look, they're in bunches. Look, they're in bunches. They're hanging in bunches. And they're attached to the vine, well, like, near the vine. There's none that aren't near the vines. And they're all in bunches. Totally grapes.
Okay.
Totally grapes.
I will truthfully, respectfully agree to disagree with you on that one, sir.
You don't think so? Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
If you could show me places where those blue stones are neither in bunches nor near one of the vines, if they were just placed in other random spots on the walls in like some kind of geometric or artistic pattern, I would totally believe it.
Maybe we'll see next week when the angle opens up tomorrow.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Doris Stroke says they're the worst grapes ever carved if they're grapes. Ouch! They're like suggestive of grapes. They're not designed to be like, wow, I thought that was a grape. Like, I almost reached out and ate that. Like, it's not, I don't think it's meant to be
no, I wasn't suggesting that either.
No, I know you weren't. I'm just saying, like, I don't think they have to be perfectly verisimilitudinous grapes in order to like, suggest fruitfulness and also wine by showing them up here. Oh, by the way, when is the new region?
Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow. Okay.
Tomorrow
morning. Great. Okay, so I'll have to remember.
So next week we can go visit the things that are there. The new update is called Rangers in Ruins.
Rangers in Ruins, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Not Rangers in Ruins? Rangers
there may be that. I'm not going to spoil the story for you.
Okay. No, but I mean,
we know you don't like spoilers.
It's a conjunction, not a preposition in the
exactly.
In the title.
Yeah, it's and.
Okay. Oh, hang on a second. Did we go down here? The other door? Because is this the other door? Or did I just get turned around? No, this is the same door. This is the normal door, right? And then this place over here is no. This is the other door. Okay, so this is the one that we went down before, right? No.
This is the one that heads across the room.
Okay, hang on. I guess I just have to go down and see where we are. Okay, so where is the river? Where am I? And what happened to me? Okay, so... Right. This is not the riverside.
No, the river's down this way.
No, it is.
Go down and around to get to the river.
Okay.
It's a long and winding road, as Paul McCartney would sing.
Right, so we come down here and we wind around this way.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us down. Oh, I am walking in multiple directions at once. I better get on my horse, so I'm going to take forever. No reason to walk it. So we come down this way. I think I never... Right, and then we wind
Y'all came
around.
up this way last time, I believe.
Because then it's going to connect to that side road, which leads up. Okay, so there's the ford. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the one that goes up to the refreshment area.
Yes.
Okay, so we come from the river, from the ford, and we come to the first intersection, which is go swing down a left and you can still take the steps up, or you head down towards that bridge. Or you take the right, and then you come up here, and then here you have another turn. You can either take a left and go up to the refreshment stands, or you take a right, and this loops you all around. And I don't think I went this way from here before, but right then it takes you all the way up to the function hall at the top, which you can see very prominently, as we were noticing, when you're coming across the river, right? So you'd come around this way. But then, what is this? Ooh. Ooh. Something else.
The third instance.
Yes. Okay, so from here, we can see the function hall up there, and then the, the lovely stairs with the gazebos, each of which has its own open bar, as we were discussing last time, up to the gazebo pinnacle at the top for best sightseeing.
And best stargazing.
And probable stargazing, though the dome would have to be open for that, but that's okay. But then that faces directly across from this very splendid looking place over here, which has, from here, at least in the dark, all we can see is, we can see a vaulted roof. We see this enormous triptych opening, right?
Yes, two statues and a door.
It's like doorway. That's what we see. Above and behind it, we can see what looks like ruins of maybe a vaulted ceiling. I don't think if we get closer, I don't think we'll be able to see it. But we've got a fancy approach. With the pillars and the archway. We've got this bigger pillar here, which presumably was, I would think, a bigger archway right here, but this is what's left of it. So we're getting sort of fancier and fancier. Here's another one, right? Two more. So maybe this was not an archway.
These are hexagonal.
Yeah. They're different from the little archway ones down there, the little round ones. Yeah, we do have the torches, which obviously shows that this is used currently as well, right? The Noldor didn't leave the tiki torches set up. Yeah. Okay, so we're on almost the same altitude as the function hall now. Across the way, though still way below the top gazebo over there. But we still have further to go up. And now from here, we can see, yes, there was an arch behind it. Again, I'm looking. I mean, obviously we see the doorway, and we'll take some time looking at the doorway. But I'm trying to see the building, like what? Because this opening is so striking, right? That it's like from the, especially in the dark, it's all you can see. It's like doorway on a hill is what you see from down at the bottom. I can see that in the sun we would be able to see more. There were these pillars off on the side, and it's
you can kind of see a little bit more if you go down to the crook in the path.
What, down there?
Yeah.
From the last crook. Oh, so
you can kind of see the side of the building.
The side a little more.
I mean, the tree's obviously in the way.
Yeah. Tree is definitely in the way.
Well, let me see if I can get up there from up by the door itself.
But you're right. I see the side walls here, and it definitely would have been, and it's partly ruinous. I mean, it had more of a top to it. So yes, it does show that when it was when it was back in the old days, it would have been a much more prominent building. The building as a whole, and not just the doorway. But still, this doorway is still a flashy piece, no matter what, here. And
you can get a little bit of sense of the side of the building.
Right. How fascinating. Look who it is. Look at the statue.
Yes.
The statue is Gilgalad.
Mm-hmm.
I was totally ready, like, from the bottom when I saw that there were statues, I was totally ready for this to be Celebrimbor, of course.
Yeah, one would expect that, but this is... The only thing that's missing is the stars on his shield.
And I think we can see where they were. I think he did have stars on his shield, yeah.
Probably, if there was, like, inset metal, the metal would have been scavenged.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, I mean, he's got the crown, he's got his spear, and he has his shield.
We know where that spear is.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Aiglos, his spear, the icicle spear. So you've got the jaggedy spearhead to it, sort of suggesting icicle. Right, love that.
Is the crown damaged, or is it naturally looking like them compared to the other one?
Yeah, I think it's. My guess is going to be that is natural.
It looks like it was made that way.
Yeah, I think so. Bet you the other one is the same. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree, it does look almost like it's just missing bits. That's
the headpiece is that going up behind him and then coming down around the front is vaguely pharaonic.
Oh yeah, the pharaoh-like thing going on. We saw. Where did we see that? We saw that on another elf statue, didn't we?
I think so. Maybe one of the ones near Kellendam.
Yeah.
Clearly elf ears, obviously. They're definitely pointy.
Right, obviously beardless as well. Yeah. Yeah. Didn't we see... I have a feeling like we first saw the pharaoh look like an Enidwaith. No, we haven't been to Enidwaith yet, have we?
No, we haven't.
Maybe I'm remembering from Grifflet in Enidwaith. But,
you might be thinking one of the Gondorian ruins in Enidwaith. Those would have been the ship kings. That king statue, like, why is this dude holding his sword out, or his staff out horizontally?
Mm-hmm. All right, well, two statues of the king looking very kingly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, out from this angle you can see the whole pharaonic thing goes up above his crown.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's definitely not the same, but that was the first thing I saw with the things draping around his neck. But it reminds me of something else from Doctor Who, but I'm not going to go into details about that. The sash of Rassilon.
Oh, right, yeah. I thought you were going to say it reminds you of Tom Baker's scarf, but...
No. Actually, Tom Baker wore the sash of Rassilon, but it kind of reminds me of that. I
remember the sash of Rassilon. Yes. Yeah. Huh.
I'm also equally fascinated, Dolorshuk, about the circle pattern above the door, because I don't think we've seen something like that before.
Yeah, so...
It's not a ring.
No, it's not. So, yeah, let's look at the door. Hang on, I gotta make sure I don't accidentally run off a cliff here while I'm trying to get a vantage.
No, that's my job.
Okay. So, first thing. Wings, right? The doors themselves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would buy that.
Feathered wings, like the two wings next to each
More
other?
pharaonic.
why wings? Now, swan wings are associated with, we're associated with like Tuor.
Dol Amroth.
Yeah, Dol Amroth for sure. But that's later and unrelated, presumably. I mean, I'm thinking back to First Age stuff because this was built by First Age dudes, in the Second Age, but by First Age dudes. And
well, there's some swans I'm trying to recall, related to Amroth, possibly. Something to do with Lorien or Elrond.
Right, but that's later. That would be later than this. Lorien isn't necessarily even. Well, I mean, Sylvan Elves would have presumably been there already, but when this was built, Galadriel isn't even necessarily there. Anyway, Tuor was associated with swans, and so like swans, the swan wing is kind of a Gondolin thing in that way, and an Eärendil thing, but
would it be swan wings specifically? Could it be other kind of wings?
It's possible, but I don't know what. If so,
I can't figure it either.
And in any case, there's it's it predates Gondor, so it has nothing to do with anything Gondorian, like the Dol Amroth thing, even the winged crown of Gondor. All of those wings are way after this. So,
Amaria suggests seabirds in general, but I'm not sure that would necessarily make sense here because there isn't like seabirds in this vicinity. This is fairly landlocked.
It is, but okay. See, I think the biggest problem I'm having is that I'm having a problem with the idea of Celebrimbor himself, like Celebrimbor the Feanorian, having wings as a symbol like that, because look, if anything, swan wings, it's a bad look for a Feanorian, right? I mean, like the swan ships and the burning of the ships, like it's still kind of too soon for swan wings, for Feanorians. So I think that's the heart of the issue that I'm having, is that it seems weird for Celebrimbor to be like, what I want my doors to like be swan wings. And I keep coming back to swans, not only because swan wings were in fact, part of the heraldry of the High Elves, but also because they're big. That seems really simple, but like these are huge doors. It's not going to be like, we're going to do like swallow wings, except ginormous, right? Like eagle's wings, yes. Swan wings, yes.
Yeah, the eagles, I could see it.
Large bird, yeah.
I could see it being an homage to the great eagles, absolutely.
Yeah, but
we're not too far from the Misties.
Here's the other thing, though. We're not. Yes, this was built by the Feanorians, but that isn't Celebrimbor. That's Gil-galad. Gil-galad on both sides, right? So maybe this place is not. And so the evidence would say, but from the Gil-galad statues, the evidence. It would be one thing if you had like one statue of Celebrimbor and the other statue of Gil-galad. That would be a nod to the High King, right? Like
absolutely.
That would be a shout out to the High King, which would be perfectly appropriate. But this is more than a shout out. We've got Gil-galad on both sides, right?
This is his place.
This is his
either
place.
made
That's
for
exactly
him
or yes.
100% about him.
Exactly
like
what
homage.
It looks like. And so that's the other. I think the swan wings might perhaps fit better in that way. Gil-galad would be more natural to associate him, not only because he is in fact from the sea and from the coast and the whole like Bay of Balar days of Gil-galad and everything else. I can much more easily see associating swan wings with Gil-galad, not really with Celebrimbor. Bricktail says, what about Celebrimbor the Teleri? No, first of all, Celebrimbor the Teleri lasted about 2 sentences, and secondly, they were 2 like unpublished sentences until last September, so I don't think so. Yeah, and Stun Duck, you're right. Galadriel has the swan ships working right on her. It's not too soon for Galadriel. She's over it, right? But
what ties would be with Galadriel and Celebrimbor, though?
Well, I mean, other than the fact that they're both Noldor. Well, and, what are they? First cousins once removed? No. First, yes. Yes, Galadriel and Curufin. Yeah, first cousins once removed. And Almaria, you're right. I mean, the swan ships, I mean, she's the daughter of the princess of the Teleri, right? So, much easier to see her. And she didn't set fire to the swan ships either, even if she was still held culpable for the kinslaying. So, anyway, it's easier to see Galadriel, and then she marries a Teleri as well, right? So Galadriel's over it. Galadriel's moved on, and it's everything's fine. Celebrimbor, though, I mean, Feanorian, he was presumably there at the burning of the ships. But I can't remember. Did we ever learn where Celebrimbor was born? I don't remember. If he was born in Middle-earth or in Aman. I've always kind of assumed he was born in Aman, but I don't know that for sure. I can't think of where that's said for sure. Anyway, okay. But anyway, back to the main point, which is this seems to be Celebrimbor's place. Gil-galad's place. Celebrimbor seems to have made this not for himself, not thinking of himself. This is a Noldorin thing, a broadly Noldorin thing, which therefore seems deliberately to showcase iconography which is not his own, not Feanorian explicitly. Yeah.
So if Gil-galad lived in Lindon and had his big kingdom there, had the Grey Havens and whatnot, they would have had seabirds there, and
yeah, exactly.
Presumably that would be a connection I could see for sure.
Sure. Yeah. No, it would make sense. It would make sense. In fact, I would say, if we were in Lindon itself, hey, Standing Stone people, you know what would be really fun? Lindon. Yeah, that would be good. I know.
It may or may not be on their drawing boards.
I know. But I know they're also kind of avoiding it because, the closer we get to the Grey Havens, it's ominous to get too close to the Grey Havens, we don't want to go there. I get it.
Besides, we all think we're going south next anyway.
Well, exactly. Why should we? We're not ready for the Havens. Is any Lotro player ready for the Grey Havens? Really? I don't.
Well, I think hobbits want to get the South Farthing in and whatnot, but I think most of us just let's ride this horse as long as it will walk.
Exactly. But nevertheless, if we were to get Lindon and any Lindon ruins, I would not be surprised there to see doors like this. It was only here in the sort of Feanorian context of Celebrimbor city that I was a little surprised to see that. But again, that would suggest that this is a deliberate, he's not doing things in his own chosen style. He's doing things. This is a broader Noldorin thing here. Exactly. This is so much Gil-galad signage, Almaria. I think that's exactly right. Yeah. Now, as far as that, the ring above the door, I agree. It's not a ring per se, is it?
It doesn't look like a ring to me. When I first glanced at it, I was thinking of the symbol for Ouroboros. But I'm like, wait a minute, that's not it.
I'm just going to make sure.
Honestly, it looks like it fits more in place with some sort of cameo or something from the Regency period in real life.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it is a complete circle. You back up enough, you can see it is a complete circle. From where I was, I couldn't tell if it was, but it's
not a ring. 100%.
It is because it's got a thing at the top and the bottom. It's not like a setting at the top there that we're seeing. Yeah, it looks more like a round picture frame, or like a wreath, as Drowsnake says. I agree with that.
It's not Christmas time.
No, exactly. It's not Christmas time.
I don't recall seeing a design like this anywhere in any elf ruins anywhere else in game, though.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I will say the obvious. It might not be an actual representation of a ring, but
no, I don't think it's round. A ring at all.
No. Well, I mean, it is a ring. I mean, in the sense that it's a round thing.
Like, well, just not with a capital R.
No, exactly. It's not a representation. It's not like I'm gonna like look down at my hand and depict that. Like, he's not depicting one of the rings of power. But I mean, it is a round thing, and there's no evidence of anything having been in the middle of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like yeah. There's not been like a picture that fell out or anything. I'm very curious to what's on the side of it, and what's on top and bottom. But of course, we don't have the magic admin camera that our community manager has to be able to go up there and take a look at it.
True.
Maybe I'll ask him tomorrow to do that for us.
We have to look from here, but it does look
when
symmetrical.
Not busy,
it does look like it's got some horizontal symmetry there.
I'm not sure if it's like a flower on either side or a stalk of wheat or
looks
stars.
Like that. Right.
Yeah, it kind of
does look like there's a flower on either side. It looks like it's on a stalk, whatever it is. The little bulb things on the top.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying as well.
Yeah.
And there's like leaves off to the little side.
Mm-hmm.
And the design on the top and the design on the bottom are not exactly the same. It's not like in reverse.
I think they're pretty close.
Well, they're similar, but there's like a triangular divot like for a forehead if you're looking at the one at the bottom. But yeah, definitely different.
Okay, right now I see what you mean. It almost looks like, as you said, a cameo. It looks like a frame. It looks like a round picture frame. Yeah, no, right, okay. Yeah, so it's not quite symmetrical, but it does have, like, you could definitely tell if that thing got put on upside down. It would look upside down if it were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Huh.
One thing I'm curious about is what these little things are flanking either side of the door. They kind of look like pieces of polished stone on a little
like
pedestal.
The pine cones?
Yeah, and there's one on the top of the arch behind the door
the peak,
that the ring is on. Way at the top.
Do you think set behind the torches, they're like faux torches? It's supposed to represent like a flame?
Possibly.
Yeah, tongues of flame, Amaraya. That's just what I'm thinking. It's just what I'm thinking.
Especially since this is, well, it's a northeastern door, so it wouldn't get the rays of the sun or the...
Can we go in? I mean, no, I can't. It's okay.
No, it's an instance.
It's a quest-bound instance?
It's the School of Fan Murdain.
Yeah. I think I've been in there ages ago. I know I've been in there ages ago. But
you've been in the ones across the pond, across the river for sure. I'm not sure about this one.
Okay. But it's not quest locked, right?
No, it's just we're in a raid and it's a
3-man, right?
Smaller instance.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I might want to peek in next time.
Mm-hmm.
But we should go anyway. It's super late.
It is indeed.
So that's really, and from the level of the door, we look back across, and yeah, we're higher than the function hall.
Mm-hmm.
About the level.
Maybe halfway up the mountain.
Yeah. Got that gazebo.
Maybe about the tree. Maybe a little bit. The tree. Yeah. The gazebo to the left of the tree.
Right. Yeah. Right around that. Yeah. Probably a little bit below the one to the right. So yeah. Yeah. Probably the tree. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So it's very prominent. It's not the highest point, but we're only getting gazebos on that peak over there. This is the highest, fanciest building. I mean, so far, you're looking at this city from a distance. This is what you're seeing. right? I mean, you might notice the gazebos, but the function hall is actually kind of concealed. I mean, it looks nice. You can see it really well from the ford right there when you cross, right? But like from a distance, this building is going to be the one that you're going to see more. So this is the most prominent structure that we've found yet in the city.
Yeah, this is more of a serious function, whereas we got, the fraternity across the way, since we're using College Party Town as our metaphor.
Yeah, this does not look like... This is
the school library. That's the fraternity party hall.
You've got
football stadium.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a serious building, not just a party hall. All right. Well, we should let people go. Good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us again. Thank you, Druid's Fire, for
you're welcome.
Filling in here this week. And we will see everybody. Be back again next week. Have a good night, everybody. Bye now.
Bye.